this border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
5 receivers at Duncan's disposal. Duncan stepping up. Hit! Ball is loose!
Big ball here.
Marshall thinks they have it. And the Horde do!
Here's the kickoff from Amaretto Curry to the Hilltoppers, and we are underway. And a fake reverse on the kick return. And here comes Townsend down the left sideline. What a way to start it for Western Kentucky on the road. And it is an opening touchdown return. And just like that, the Hilltoppers strike first.
Justin Rohrwasser to try to win it for Marshall from 53 yards out. It's got the leg. It is good! And the perfect season continues for Justin Rohrwasser.
Goes for 2. Going for the win. Western Kentucky going for the victory. Rolling to his right. Quick strike. And they did it! Western Kentucky has ended the perfect season into the hands of Willie McNeil. A shocker here in West Virginia. And it is over for Marshall. They end the regular season 11-1.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. I got Moff here with me, and we got some big games to talk about. Of course, we're going to recap Moonshine Throwdown, which saw Western Kentucky win in convincing fashion. And we've got to preview a Conference USA championship game and a rematch against UTSA, who's fresh off of the heels of a big-time butt whooping at the hands of North Texas. What? But, you know, we got a lot of talk. We've got a lot to talk about. I don't think anybody saw this one ending up the way that it did, really, Steve. I mean, maybe some people were correct in the score, but I don't think that they saw it playing out the way that it did, especially early on in this game. If ever there was a game where you could say this is a tale of two halves, boy, this has got to be the one. But, you know, we'll get into some particulars and some numbers, and we'll start talking some stats, and we've got a lot to talk about because we cover both of these teams. So there's just a lot of stats that I'm going to be throwing out there throughout the course of this thing and some bullet points and all that good stuff. But there's nowhere better to start than with you talking about being in Huntington, West Virginia, at the game, front row, in the topper section, cheering on the guys, giving them hell, declaring ownership of Jones C. Edwards Stadium. So, it was more than just the game. You know, it's the trip and some folks you were hoping to see and new friends and all that kind of stuff. So talk about the experience and, you know, and the game, and then we'll talk about some stats.
Yeah, I mean, Huntington, West Virginia is always very inviting, very welcoming. Obviously we had been talking on here about me making the trip, hopefully for several weeks. And it turned into something I was like, I have to do this. I want to do this. So many people on the Marshall side were like, dude, come see us. So, finally it boiled down to, I'm going to make the trip. As it so happened, my wife was able to make the trip with me. Initially, she wasn't going to, but we drove over Friday afternoon, evening, got to our hotel, made our way over to Union, met some people over there, talked to some people, Mike Hayner being one of them, definitely wanted to see him, tailgate with him. Met some other guys, a UTSA guy, I don't know his name, a UK guy, an MTSU guy, had too many drinks, making all kinds of declarations. I do think one of them was posted on Twitter, but let me back up just a little bit. Because there's a guy who is the host of this podcast who said he was going to be in Florida. And
True.
Then I turn around and I was probably about 2-3 drinks. Well, I had been drinking at the hotel before we left because I was like, hey, I'm getting some free drinks here. I'm shooting at the hotel. And so I'm at the Union and I'm like 2-3 drinks in go to the bathroom, come back. I'm leaned back in my seat, Beth's across from me. And then I look up and there's some dude hugging up on my wife. Lo and behold, it was you, my guys. So
Yeah.
That was honestly like the biggest just cherry on top of my weekend. And before I even go into the tailgating side of things, you've definitely turned into one of those people that's just huge friend in my life. More than just a podcast and Twitter and rivalry account and all this stuff. Our families see each other on vacation. Not to get emotional, sentimental on you, but like there's not a lot of people in life that that you would do anything for and they'll do anything for you in return. But like you're one of those people. And that was so awesome. Just that was like a great start of the weekend. But then we carried it over into tailgating. The next day, we met up, went and saw Potty Train again, like we did the first home game of the year. Bounced over, saw your friend Russ, ran in, Hank and Kelly were there. We saw Jeff Bainham rode up on us. We went and saw Dr. Rapai. God, I'm just trying to remember all the names. We ended up seeing Ryan Butler at the game, MU engineer at the game, Will Harris at the game. But really just getting to soak in that whole experience. I mean, we went to Fat Patty's before the game. We're eating. I got people coming up to me. Hey, are you the guy from Twitter? Yeah, that's me. Talk to them. Super inviting. Hey, come by our tailgate, man. We leave Fat Patty's. I'm walking up the sidewalk to come meet you. Ironically, literally in the main parking lot there beside the stadium, guys yelling out wearing green. Hey, man, do you need a beer? Y'all want beer? Y'all good? Good? Thirsty? I was still recovering from the Union the night before. Like, I was dragging when we met up. I was dehydrated. But it was worth it. But just the overall atmosphere, just everything about Huntington, West Virginia, every tailgate, every person, every friend. I didn't have one bad interaction with anyone there. And then the environment of the game, I know you said your timeline was filled with people dogging on the attendance. And granted, it wasn't a sellout by any means. It wasn't, it was 2/3 full, on visual inspection. I don't know what the exact number was. I'm sure you do. But it was a good crowd. For a holiday weekend, it was a good, loud, active crowd. And Western fans on that same weekend, if we were at home, would have been dying to have that crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It was very good, very loud, very impressive. So if anyone wearing green is mad about that, man, what a good problem to have. But just the overall atmosphere of everything. Oh, we saw Trace and his girlfriend there. Don't let me forget
Don't forget
that.
Trace and Miss Megan.
The other co-host did show up. Yeah, we got to hang out with him. They got to meet my wife.
Yeah,
they had never met her. Got to talk with her for a while. So, man, just overall, it was just amazing trip as always. Welcoming, everybody inviting, just friendly, good, jovial conversation. Getting to know people, new people, old people, young people, old people. It doesn't matter. It's always a good and the best time in Huntington. When they say that their atmosphere is the most welcoming, literally can't beat it. Hands down, bar none. It was amazing. And the fact that you were there from start to finish for me, I mean, literally till the time the game ended and we were leaving at the team buses, you were one of the first people I saw and you were one of the last people I saw. So icing on the cake, man. I loved my trip. It was amazing.
I'm glad you had a great time. I know that probably somewhere in the back of your mind, you probably thought that I'd been lying about being able to make the trip this whole time, but it just worked out. It did. I mean, I initially had the time off from work scheduled and I was looking at flights and everything was just like stupid expensive. And there was no way I was going to be able to make the trip. There wasn't. And I gave up the time off. And usually that's like the cardinal sin. Like once you give the time off, you ain't getting it back. And like a week went by and maybe a little longer. And I started checking again and things for some reason started getting a little cheaper. And I thought, okay, maybe I can do this. And then I look and the time is still available. So I snatched that right back up. And honest to God, a couple of days before, the game maybe 3 days before, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to do it. Well, that's what I'll do.
No
and
excuses.
I had no excuses, right? I mean, I had that tossed at me a little bit. My own friend threw that up in my face, and I'm 1,000 miles away, and he lives in the same daggone town. I mean, he's in Huntington, and I'm in Land O'Lakes, Florida, and he's like, I thought you said no excuses. So, what are you supposed to do? Me of all people, if I can make it happen, I have to make it happen. I should make it happen. I spend 364 days a year, going to work every day with this Twitter account and this podcast and all that good stuff. And, to just go, if it was $100 less, I'd go. What the hell? I know $100 is a lot of money, but when you can, see some good friends, when you can have a great experience in the weekend and, just have an overall good time, it's really worth it. These are things that, like, what am I going to spend $100 on? Something like a couple of tanks of gas? I mean, I'd rather do this, So when it came to be a possibility and a real possibility that I could make it, there was no chance in hell I was going to tell you I was coming, because I knew at this point, I knew you were already convinced I wasn't. And I was thinking, there's no chance. I'm going to roll up into the Union. I went in with Russ, and I don't know how, but I just happened to look out the front door, and I saw you way across the street walking towards the door, and I just rolled out. And you walked by me a couple of times. I'm glad you didn't see me, but you did. And that look, that was priceless. To the double take, to like, that guy looks familiar. Wait, that is who that is. But that was worth it. It was that was a good start to the weekend. And yeah, you're right. We had a lot of fun on Saturday. We met a lot of our folks that we've become acquainted with, via Twitter these past couple of years. And, you mentioned we were able to meet up with Mike and Mike Hayner, and, that was a bittersweet, because it was a lot of fun to hang out with Mike. And then, tragedy struck his family really hours after we left him at the Union. We closed the bar down, and hours later, tragedy struck the Hayner family, and it got worse. Saturday evening, it got worse, and we come to find out he ultimately suffered a loss in the family, and he's put that out there on social media. So I'm not sharing anything that isn't out there already, and we wanted to. Specifically let him know that the community that surrounds the Moonshine Throwdown, our followers, the people that listen to the show, everybody that's familiar with, what we do and what we're trying to create and the whole atmosphere. And it's not just hatred all the time, and it's not just a football game. It's, we try to do something special here. And I think we're achieving that. Really. I really do think we're achieving a different level of rivalry with what we do. And the support and the outpouring of support that Mike was able to receive from both sides, from Western fans and from Marshall fans, and everybody was really trying to uplift him and send some positivity his way. And we continue to do that. We really hope that Mike, we hope your peace returns as soon as it possibly can. I don't want you to be in this situation any longer than you really have to be. I don't want you to be in a frame of mind that you don't want to be in any longer than you have to be. So, we're still continuing to think about you, and we're still hoping for your peace to return. It's just sad that you couldn't join us on Saturday, but I'd have been right where you were, without a doubt. No questions asked. I would have been right where you were. So we hope to have you back in the fold real soon. We hope everything is, I guess the cliche thing is to say as back to normal as soon as possible, even though that will really never be the case. But we're still thinking about you a whole lot. Saturday was a great time. Outside of the news of what happened to Mike, the game. I mean, we got to talk about this game because it was all on the line. That's what you want, right? You want the rivalry game. You want the East on the line. You want everything, all the marbles coming down for this one game. And like I said in the lead-in, this was a tale of two halves. It really, really was. It could not have possibly started very much slower for Western Kentucky. As much as we have clamored and beat the drum, they've got a fast start, or they've got to start fast. It's got to happen. It could not have started slower, really, for Western in this game. You could tell Marshall had a game plan, and man, it was working. It really was working. And we had said that, Grant Wells was going to have the play potentially his best game in a Herd uniform in order to have Marshall to have a chance to outduel Bailey Zappi in this Western Kentucky offense. And I think it's fair to say he was on pace to have potentially the best game in a Herd uniform. He was clicking. He started out 9 of 9, 10 of 10, something like that. And then, he got hit. D'Angelo Malone hit him, knocked the ball out. Wells was injured on the play. And he didn't return. That was with 10 minutes left in the second half. So Marshall got their QB1 for 20 minutes out of 60 minutes, and they were clicking. It was looking good for the Herd. The guys in green were riding pretty high. Even as the first half came to a close, they managed to finish strong. Luke Zaban comes in, plays second half, or plays for Grant Wells, and they close out the first half strong. Zaban makes enough plays to keep the ball moving a little bit. The defense still playing strong. And then they come out in the second half. And I listened to the podcast you told me, Beyond the Hill with Bailey Zappi, that was just, the day after the game. And he even mentioned that, we went at halftime and we didn't make these extreme adjustments. We just knew we just had to get it going. Do what we do and get it going. And that's what they did, and they come out and they score 47 points in the second half. Something was going right. So when it's all said and done, Western Kentucky gets the clean sweep of those indicators: yards, time of possession, first downs, and turnovers. Of course, 485 to 325 yards for Marshall. Time of possession was pretty close, but that's because it was so one-sided in the first half. 30 minutes, 34 seconds for Western, 29 minutes, 26 seconds for Marshall. First downs are pretty tight, 25 to 20 in favor of Western, and the turnovers, 2 for the Herd, 0 for Western Kentucky. Another point of contention we made. And it came, just true to life. It proved to be a big, big difference. Marshall carries a 14-6 lead into halftime. And like I said, Western comes out and scores 47 in the second half. Those 6 points is Western's fewest in the first half all season. So that tells you something was going right for Marshall. The Tops, they scored in every phase in the second half, offense, defense, and on special teams. I mean, it was just their day. Everything was going right in the second 30 minutes of that game. Marshall was able to hang around for that next 10 minutes of the first half to finish strong in the first half. But if you look at that drive chart, I mean, let me run down it real quick before we start talking about some, players to look out for. Marshall comes out, they force a 3-and-out for Western Kentucky to start the game, and then they go on a 15-play, 79-yard touchdown drive that lasts almost 7 minutes of game time. That is not the Marshall that we know. They're scoring in 3 to 4 minutes. If they get somewhere around 4.5 to 5, it's kind of an outlier. But to go 7 minutes is something in and of itself. But when you look at that second half drive chart, it's just so telling. Marshall gets the ball coming out at the second half, mind you, holding a 14-6 lead, and it goes like this: Marshall, punt, Western, touchdown. Marshall, punt, Western, touchdown. Marshall, punt, Western, touchdown. Marshall, punt, Western, field goal. Marshall, punt, Western, touchdown. Marshall, touchdown. Marshall, turnover on downs. Western, field goal. Western, pick 6, end of game. I mean, how do you recover from that? You just obviously can't. So, Steve, before we get into stats, you were able to pay a little bit closer to the game as it was going on in real time. What were you seeing that was what I keep calling this tale of two halves? What were you seeing in the first half that was working or wasn't working versus what started to work in the second half?
I mean, like you said, Grant Wells was having a phenomenal game when it started. I mean, to the defense turned us over. We forced us to punt, and came out and led that long drive. And then we get the ball back, punt again. You all get the ball back, go and score again. I remember literally turning around saying, this is the worst start possible for us to get behind by this much. Because every time we've been down by 14, we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
In our 1-4 start, we got behind and played catch up, and it was not good for us. Grant Wells came out and was having a phenomenal game. He was just making all the right reads, all the right check downs, very good throws. I think I only had one that was tossed up that could have been picked. We talked about several of those being possible. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Marshall was doing a really good job at dropping guys into coverage, dropping linebackers into coverage, and kind of bracketing. They really were bracketing Jared Stearns and really making Bailey have to, because Bailey's going to come to him, first or second read, and then really making him have to make other throws. And if you remember, I kept turning around saying, Bailey was throwing everything from the pocket to the sideline. Everything was going like far hash to the sideline. And those are hard throws. And it was cold outside. It's hard to catch that ball. So I really felt like we weren't taking the underneath game, the over the middle, the yards after catch opportunities that we usually do. But a lot of that was because of the coverage that Marshall was playing. Unfortunately, Grant Wells got hurt. We've all seen the video of D'Angelo Malone coming around, getting kind of shed off the play, and then kept his motor going and came in and made the play. Unfortunately, Grant Wells got hurt, turned the ball over, and that completely changed the dynamics of the game. It really made Marshall kind of one-dimensional, that we weren't really scared of the passing from Luke Saban. Wasn't really tearing us up, wasn't really making good throws. And like Bailey said, the second half just was, they just need that one play. And it ended up being that big David Davis touchdown play that just kind of ignited things. And then, the lid was off the hoop at that point, so to speak. And, Western just rattled off a lot of points. Didn't really make a lot of adjustments. I feel like they weren't making as many throws to the sideline. They were making more throws, up the seam and over the middle that was resulting in good plays. The running backs were having good runs, good successful runs that were moving chains. And really just, it was just really just, I guess, a perfect storm. An offense that wasn't led by Grant Wells was giving the ball back to Western, 3 and out pretty quick, punting to us. And then Western was clicking on the other side of the ball there and just really turned it on that second half. I mean, that goes without saying, but you really hate to win that way, by QB1 going down. But at the same time, you have to have that next man up mentality and say, it doesn't matter. Injuries happens to every team. There's players up and down both rosters that are hurt. But you hate that it happened in our game, at your home stadium. But still a great game. But like you said, tale of two halves is the perfect summation of what this game was and what it came down to.
I mean, I don't think any Western fan is going to say, well, they're all going to be happy about the win, of course. And I don't care how dark the red glasses are that you wear. I don't think anybody could look at that and go, we do that even if Grant Wells doesn't get hurt, because there's no way. I mean, he was clicking and he can always cool down, but it's highly unlikely that they go, 5 3-and-outs or 4 3-and-outs and whatever in the second half. I find it hard to believe that at least the ball doesn't get moved down a little closer in the second half to where there's maybe some field goal opportunities, so where that Western doesn't get as many possessions in the second half. But still, what an amazing half of football for Western Kentucky. 47 points. I mean, I told you at one point in the second half, I don't remember. It may have been on that big David Davis touchdown. I looked at you and I said, they smell blood. And that was it. And I knew that, like, okay, well, Marshall's not moving the ball. Now these big plays are clicking. They smell blood. Helton is not going to let up. He remembers what happened 2 years ago when they lost on that last second field goal and he tried to ice Rohrwasser twice. And it wasn't good. He wasn't going to, we're not making friends here. You know what I mean? So let's talk about the guys. Another point of contention I told you would be the tipping point for Marshall. Where would they win or lose the game? And I said specifically, if their third and fourth defensive backs can't stop the third and fourth and fifth receivers for Western Kentucky, they've got no shot. And who proves to get in the end zone the most? The third and fourth wide receivers. Daywood and Dalvin Smith find the end zone. Corley finds the end zone. They do a great job of essentially shutting down Jarrett Stearns. He only has 4 catches for 28 yards on the day. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that for the nation's leading receiver. Mitch Tinsley still had a great game, 9 catches and 84 yards, but it was those 3 other guys that get in the end zone, do all the damage. Bailey Zappi, 25 of 48, 328 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. The biggest stat that I've heard from this game regarding Bailey Zappi is that he put up such a monster third quarter. He passed for 3 of those 4 touchdowns, I believe it was, and something like 192 yards in the third quarter, which was more than Marshall was allowing in entire games all season. Okay, that was above their game average. So another stellar performance for Bailey Zappi despite a ridiculously slow start. But he's over the 50 touchdown mark now for the season. He's like hairs away from going over the 5,000 yard mark. Unless something catastrophic happens, he's going to break that 5,000 yard barrier in the Conference USA Championship game. Noah Whittington leading the way for the tops on the ground, 14 carries, 69 yards. I mentioned David Davis leading through the air yardage wise, just 3 catches, but 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mitch Tinsley, I said 9 catches, 84 yards. Malachi Corley, great game, 4 catches, 76 yards and a touchdown. Jarrett Stearns, again, just 4 for 28. Dalvin Smith, Mr. All I Do is ever catch touchdowns. 2 catches for 22 yards, but 1 goes to the end zone. 485 total yards for the tops. Here's the kicker. They outrush Marshall 157 to 129. And, of course, some of that has to do with the fact that Marshall just can't run the ball when they are trading punts for touchdowns in the second half. And no turnovers offensively for the Toppers, which was huge in keeping that momentum going in the second half. Grant Wells for the Herd starts out, like I said, scorching hot. I think he was 9 of 9. I don't think he went 10 for 10. He might have, though. 10 of 14 total, 76 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, and 1 touchdown on the ground. He did have a lost fumble, of course, the same play where Malone hit him and he put him out for the rest of the game. So in 20 minutes of gameplay, those are the numbers that Wells was putting up. He was off to a really fast start. I would have loved to have seen these two duke it out in this game. I think it would have been one for the ages. I'm not talking a Cato and Brandon Dowdy matchup, but it would have been one in its own right that would have probably come down to somebody needing a strong fourth quarter. Luke Zaban comes in 16 of 25 on the day, 123 yards, 1 touchdown, and an interception. Rasheen Ali almost gets to 100 yards, 24 carries, 99 yards, but the Toppers do a fabulous job of keeping the nation's leading rushing touchdown grabber out of the end zone. No touchdowns on the ground. Corey Gamage, 7 catches for 44 yards. Shadid Ahmed, just 1 catch, but it does go for a 41-yard touchdown, and I watched the replay on that, and man, he was fighting to get in that end zone. He wanted that one bad. So good for him. Xavier Gaines, I told you, we all agreed, I think, that Gaines needed to be utilized the way he should have been utilized the last 4 freaking years, and he ends up with 3 catches and 29 yards. I mean, what the hell? 325 yards total for the Herd. Ali, again, no touchdowns. Wells knocked out, and the Herd has 2 turnovers. You just can't expect to win when all those things go wrong. But, good on the Toppers. They saw an opportunity and they seized it, and that's what great teams do. When they get an advantage, they seek and destroy, and that's what Western Kentucky did. Defensively for the Tops, it's Jaden Hunter leading the way, 9 tackles, 6 solo, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. D'Angelo Malone, 7 tackles, 5 solo, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. Biggest hit of the day, once again, putting Wells out of the game. Khalif Alisi, 7 tackles, 5 solo, 1.5 tackles for loss, and 2 passes defended. Demetrius Kane, 7 tackles, 3 solo. Davion Williams gets himself a 45-yard pick six. This Western Kentucky defense holds Marshall to 7 second-half points. They knock Wells out of the game. They get a pick six and a fumble recovery. Not much more you can ask for. They keep the turnover machine cranking. For the Herd, Abraham Beauplan leading the way, 11 tackles, 3 solo, 1 tackle for loss, and Brandon Drayton, 10 tackles, 4 solo, and a pass defended. Eli Neal, 9 tackles, 3 solo, 2 passes defended, and 2 quarterback hurries. And Stephen Gilmore, 8 tackles, 5 solo, 3 passes defended. This was mentioned several times, the difference between first half and second half. But this Herd defense only gets 1 sack on the day, and that's by Owen Porter, and calls 0 turnovers. No matter how well they played in the first half, and they played great. The defensive backs were having one of their best coverage days of the season. No DPIs that I could remember in the first half. Maybe there was one I can't remember. Even the linebackers were doing a great job. I remember one play in particular where Eli Neal gets a pass defended on Jarrah Stearns on a big 3rd down play. It was all going right for these guys. And then the great equalizer, the QB1 goes out, and these guys can't stay off the field in the second half because Marshall can't buy a first down. Braden Narveson, 4 of 5 on field goals, 5 of 5 extra points. Conference USA Special Teams Player of the Week for his efforts. A.J. Brathwaite gets a 43-yard touchdown on a horrible onside kick. Horrible onside kick. I see that. The onside kick literally goes right to him, and there's not a defender in sight, and he basically streaks 43 yards untouched for a touchdown. That's when you know it ain't your day. Shane Chucci only has 3 extra points, not a field goal attempt. And Robert Lefevre, 7 punts. 7 punts. I think 5 of those came in the second half. 39.3 yard average and a long of 49. The lone plus there is that he did out punt John Haggerty, both in average and the long on the day. The bad part about it is Haggerty only punted 3 times, and Lefevre had to do it 7 times. So lots of guys had lots of numbers. Braden Narveson was a whisker away from being 5 of 5 on the day. The kick to end the half hits the crossbar, and of course it was of no consequence. But Steve, a lot of guys may call this one, one of the better Moonshine Throwdowns but those are all going to be Western fans. There ain't no Herd fan that's appreciating this 32-point drubbing that they took. So let's get into some grades here. What do you got for your quarterback, despite a fairly, I don't want to say abysmal, but a pretty bad first half to come out and bounce back the way he did?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a pedestrian or average effort for any other quarterback. It was definitely below average for what you expect. But just listening to that Beyond the Hill today with Tyler Eaton, I mean, even Bailey said, I was trying to do too much. I was trying to make throws and plays and stuff that wasn't there, forcing things. And it took a lot longer for him to get settled down to just take the play that's there instead of trying to force something that might be a big explosive player down the field. And that was really the difference from first half, second half, from losing to winning. But I still give him an A. I mean, it's still a really good, really productive game. No turnovers. There were a couple balls that were up for grabs that could have been turnovers. Luckily, they didn't turn in interceptions. I think he did have a bad snap that hit the ground once, but he got on top of it and was only sacked once, so he always avoids pressure. So Zappe gets an A. Not overall, not his best game, but certainly, again, this is the man that stirs the drink, and that second half turned it on and led us to victory.
Yeah, it might not have been his best game, but man, it's going to be hard to argue against it being potentially his best half. Because he was he really dialed in and became basically unstoppable in that second half. Offensively as a whole, Despite 6 points in the first half, 47 points in the second half. Of course, not all of those come from the offensive side of the ball. You get a pick six, you get an onside kick recover that goes to touchdown. Fluky, crazy play, but still lots of touchdowns, lots of yards, and lots of points in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, slow start, behind the 8 ball at halftime, but woke up in the second half. And, if we're grading halves, obviously this would be different. But if we're grading the whole game, a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of points, big victory, it's an A. That first half's going to wash out. So great game, kept doing what they need to do and what they're going to do every week.
Well, let's hope. We'll get into that in a little bit. Defensively, I don't really know what you want to make of it, because I think in the second half of this game, I think Western's best defensive player was Marshall's offense, because they couldn't really do anything. But I don't want to negate what they were able to do. They still turn it over. They still score on defense. Some guys still made some really big plays. What do you got for this defense?
I mean, honestly, the defense in the first half was kind of what kept us in this game, because for all of our offensive woes in the first half, we could have been down a lot more than 8 at halftime. So the fact that we were still getting off the field, still defense was just balling lights out in the first half. This could have been a 28-35-6 type score at halftime, but those boys were playing their butts off. And granted, that deficit obviously still could have been made up, but there's a lot less pressure when you come out from halftime and you're only down 8 after playing literally the worst offensive half of your season. In the worst game to play that in the season, you're playing for the East title and the conference championship berth. So defense gets an A for me. Still did their thing. It's unfortunate that it caused an injury to QB1. At the end of the day, though, they held Marshall to 21 points. Continued the turnovers. It's hard to argue with what the defense did, because they're really underappreciated these last 7 games. But the real ones, we recognize, man, Mo Crumb's balling out, and all his guys are balling out with him. Yeah,
they seem to be making all the right calls right now. And there was a particular play that was a momentum changer in the first half. And you're right. They stopped Marshall in a 4th and 1. This is after the Wells injury, where there was a questionable spot and a review of the spot on a Rasheen Ali catch out of the backfield that I thought looked like it was a no-brainer first down. But anyway, they uphold the call on the field, and it goes to a 4th and 1. And, man, they just stifle Zaban on a loss and take the ball right there in herd territory, I believe. So they were flying around all game long, that's for sure. Special teams, I mean, what the heck can you say? They accounted for a lot of points in this game. 20-some points came from, the defense or the special teams.
Yeah, I mean, Legatron did his thing, even with the kids in the front row heckling him. We got to watch this man warming up close and personal for most of the game. But still, he came out, banged a lot of field goals through. Was literally our only points in the first half, those 2 field goals. He did miss one. It looked like he just, got a bad leg on it. It didn't have his usual arch.
Yeah, it was just kicked low.
It was a really low kick, and usually he puts a lot of air on the ball. So one missed kick, not the end of the world. Obviously, it didn't come back to bite us. And then the special teams touchdown, obviously, is kind of just icing on the cake. No big blunders or mistakes on our special team side of the ball. So still an A for special teams, just doing what they do and consistent like always. Yeah,
this is really turning into the theme of this unit, and that's the best theme you can have on special teams. Coaching-wise, great game plan despite the uber slow start in the first half. But they stuck with what they knew would work, and eventually the things started lining out. So what do you got for this coaching staff this week?
Yeah, I mean, they really stuck with the mantra of it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's really hard to stick to when you're down on the road at half in such a game with so much on the line. They still stuck to what they were doing with the defensive calls, offensive calls, even hearing Bailey talk about today on the podcast that we both listened to. Offense, Kitley just said, hey, we just have to do what we do, play our ball. We're not going to shake things up. We're not going to, idealistically, we're not changing anything. Play ball. That's what they did. So coaching, man, I give them an A. I mean, big road win, rivalry win, convincing win in all three phases. So an A for coaching.
So here's the thing for me when we're talking about this coaching staff and the game plan and how they executed it. This, like I said earlier in the episode, is where you prove that you're not just a good team, but you're a great team, because you see an opportunity there and you go at it full force. They saw a little bit of a weakness that turned out to be something they could exploit, and they didn't just ho-hum their way through this game and not take any risks. And they continued to run their offense. They continued to be aggressive on defense. And they proved that we're not just a good team that can score a lot of points. We're a great team that if you give us an opportunity to crush you, we will crush you. And that's what you have to be. That's the mindset you have to be if you want to be a championship caliber team. And where does Western Kentucky find itself? Playing for a championship this week. When you're presented with an opportunity, and if it's there this Friday, I fully expect that they'll take that opportunity to crush the life out of UTSA as well. Now, that's on UTSA not to present that opportunity, obviously. But it's total A+ for Tyson Helton and crew in this one. Total A+, without a doubt. I don't care that they got 6 points in the first half. It meant nothing. At the end of the day, when you look up at the scoreboard, there's a 53 there. What the hell else? I mean, if this offense is clicking in the first half, whoo, and Wells gets injured, man, this one, they could have had 80. I mean, it's not unfathomable for that to have happened if they're clicking from the get-go and QB1 goes down for the hurt. Overall, though, what do you got for this team? It's clean sweep across the board. I'm going to have to go way back into all these podcasts and see when the last time somebody got a freaking B from you, because they have been killing it for like 6 or 8 weeks now. What do you got for their overall effort?
Yeah, I mean, you might have to go back to like the UTSA game.
I'm saying, right?
I don't know when it was, but yeah, there's been a lot of A's during the 7-game win streak. And I'll even go one step further. And I tweeted this after the game. We were driving back to Bowling Green. I let the wife drive because I had Twitter fingers driving home. I said we need to highly consider ranking WKU, and that's not hyperbole. We had barely lost to the number 15, whatever team they were at the time when this game was played, before they took an L to North Texas. Lost to them by a toenail, and then we've rattled off 7 straight wins, which is no small feat in college football. I think we are that good a football team. I think we are a top 25 team. Will we receive votes? Probably not this week. Maybe if we beat UTSA, but probably not. But I think we are that good and caliber of a team that top 25 consideration is not unwarranted. But that's neither here nor there. Overall, it's an A.
Overall, it is an A, and the disrespect is just becoming a theme for this team on a national stage. You got the best quarterback in the land. He can't sniff any national respect until all of a sudden he throws 50 touchdowns, and now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, well, who's this guy? He's pretty good. We should have been talking about him for months. Well, guess who has been? We have. It was like, oh, look at this receiver. He's got 120-some catches. Maybe we should have been talking about this guy. Yeah, no shit. So where was the Biletnikoff Award, finalist nod? Where was the Davey O'Brien finalist nod? Where's the Broyles Award finalist nod? The disrespect is just a theme. So why would you expect Western Kentucky to get any type of voting record or poll recognition right now? I mean, it's just par for the course for this team. They might go down as one of the most disrespected teams in recent G5 history. But I have no doubt in saying if they beat UTSA this week, when they beat UTSA this week, and if they boat race somebody, or don't even boat race, just win a bowl game, you're talking about a 9-game win streak? You're looking at a 10-win team. It's going to be awful hard to keep them out of the final poll of the season, at least. You may find some, sneak into a 25th spot or something. after beating UTSA. But man, really, what's hurting that effort, I think, right now is that big loss to North Texas that UTSA just had. If they go in undefeated and then you beat them, but you can't, you can't control that. The overall effort is an A without a doubt. But if they win the next two, I think they'll be ranked at the end of the season. Look, on the other side of this break, we've got a Conference USA Championship game to preview. The Tops are heading to San Antonio to face UTSA in a rematch from earlier this season. We'll talk all about it. Hang with us. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast.
5 and 9, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns so far in the third quarter. And he's crossed the 50 touchdown pass, and it looks like he's got 51 down the sidelines. Davis, his second touchdown of the game. Western Kentucky pouring it on here in quarter number 3.
Well, we said it at the beginning of the season when we were doing position group breakdowns. This team has the capability of being a Conference USA championship caliber team if enough things go right. A lot of things went right. Some things went righter than we thought. Some things happened that we didn't even see coming. But you add it all up, and you're looking at a 7-game win streak, a big rivalry win to cement yourself as the Conference USA East Division champion, and a trip to the Conference USA Championship game, which happens to be a rematch against UTSA, which was played earlier in the season. UTSA, of course, 11-1 on the season after just getting handed a thrashing at the hands of North Texas. What? 45-23. What the heck was going on? Tops enter the game. I don't know if they enter the game, but we're recording, Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, and the line has shifted several times. But currently the Tops, as we record, are -2.5 with an over-under of 72.5 points. Power index is seriously a coin flip. In an away game, championship game against an 11-1, formerly top 25 UTSA team, 49.3% chance to win for WKU. I mean, what? That's kind of crazy. The game is happening this Friday, December, 3rd? I don't know. I forgot to write that part down, but whatever. If you don't know when the game is, then look on an app somewhere because you should know. I should know. What am I telling you? You should know. I should know. This is a rematch from Game 5. It's a 52-46 loss for the Tops at home in BGKY, and it was the last time that we had to do a podcast about a loss for Western Kentucky. And you were right. They were within an eyelash of getting that win. Bailey Zappi throws an interception as the Tops are heading into the end zone, and an unbelievably athletic play by the UTSA linebacker to nab that interception and seal the game. But this is a different Topper team. Toppers were still trying to figure out an identity defensively. They were still, getting passed all over and run all over and scored upon, and that just ain't the way this defense is playing now. I highly, highly, highly doubt they're going to give up another 52-point effort to UTSA. They haven't done that since then to anyone else, and they have become mighty, mighty stingy and a turnover machine. So, Steve, looking at the Conference USA Championship game, it is an away game. The Alamo Dome is going to be loud. We all know by now about this fundraising effort, this crowdfunding effort they have going on in San Antonio to pack out the Alamo Dome with road runners, expecting a 50,000, maybe 60,000 person crowd. And it'll be a hostile environment. It'll be loud. And being that it's in a dome, it's going to be even louder. But what do you think? What's this game feeling like for you?
I've heard they're expecting 40,000. I think 50,000 would be asking a lot. I know they've done it before, but I think that was like their opening game at that level. But either way, I mean, when you're in a dome, I mean, that's a completely different environment than an open air stadium. There's going to be a lot of noise. I'm sure the offense is practicing this week on silent counts, audibles, hand signals, how they're communicating that stuff. Because, on the offensive side of the ball, it's going to be something they haven't experienced all year. And it's going to be loud. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a good crowd. It's going to be a tough environment. But like you said, this WKU team is completely different. Not offensively. I mean, offensively, they're if anything,
They're better.
If anything, they're more potent. There's more weapons. There's more familiarity. There's more, synchronization. More depth. No major injuries. The offense is not the worry. The defense has gone from giving up 38 points a game to now giving up 18.9 points per game over the last 7. And what really makes most Hilltoppers feel optimistic about this game is that it literally took Frank Harris playing the best game of his college career and a crappy chop block call, when we were on the 2-yard line for them to beat us last time. And then if you look at their recent game schedule, they're barely beating Southern Miss. They're barely beating UAB. They get curb stomped by North Texas. There's not a lot of, positivity, a lot of momentum for UTSA. They can play we got out of our system and now we're going to come back with something to prove. You can say that all day long, but this was not just a one game happening. You've been struggling. Yes, UAB is a good team. Southern Miss is not. You struggled with Southern Miss and barely beat them. This is becoming a pattern. And I know the weather against UNT was not great. It was raining. I've read it. I've seen it. But again, this is not a one-game thing. And good teams, great teams, win in those conditions. So, UTSA, they should be confident. I mean, they're at home. It's going to be a tough environment. They have a good football team. But, ever since Western started this winning streak and the cards were starting to come across, okay, if they beat FAU, if they beat Marshall, if they beat Charlotte, if they win all these games, this is a rematch in the makings. Every Twitter account that I follow, I lurk, I interact with, whatever you want to call it, have been saying, please Marshall win. Please anybody else win. Please we don't want Bailey Zappi again.
Yeah.
You don't want him in a dome in perfect weather environment with all those receivers and with a better defense. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy win. It's not going to be a cruise victory. It's not going to be 47 points and a half. But I'm optimistic that we can win. Our team is just all 3 phases just playing lights out. Somebody said the last game, if we played our worst game of the season, we could still whip Marshall's ass. I don't know who said that. He was half right, though. We played the worst half of our season and still whip Marshall's ass. we got that out of our system, so to speak. UTSA, Meat Nation's about to get beeped. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, we've been saying it for weeks. We don't think that UTSA wanted any part of Western Kentucky in a rematch. They were hoping that the Herd was going to be able to pull this one out because they just matched up better with them. And yes, UTSA beat Western Kentucky in Bowling Green earlier in the season. They did. We're not disputing the fact that they did. We're not even making excuses for it. But it's highly unlikely that Frank Harris has another career day in that game where he has 6 touchdowns and 1 interception, and on the interception he forces a fumble immediately. I just don't see that happening again. So much like I said in the preview for the Moonshine Throwdown, I think UTSA is going to have to play one of their best, if not their best, game to date to beat Western, because this Western team that they beat before isn't the same Western team. They're better on offense and they're way better on defense. So I like Western Kentucky's chances as well, even though it is on the road, even though it is going to be in a hostile environment. And all these road runners keep saying is, well, we're going to have 40, 50K in the dome and they're not going to be able to handle the noise and blah, 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 blah. Hey, maybe you guys should go back and look where they played in East Lansing. How many were in the stands there and how much yardage they put up against the Spartans, 70,000 on hand in East Lansing, and the Tops put up 560 yards, outgaining Michigan State. And we mentioned then, had they not had to settle for a few field goals in place of touchdowns, this might be a different game we're talking about here. This could have been a monumental upset at the time. So if you think noise is going to bug Western Kentucky to the point to where they can't put up yards and points, you haven't been paying attention. That's not that much of a weapon. Yeah, inside it will be. But like you said, you're looking at 72 degrees, perfect conditions. Are you going to be able, are your DBs going to be able to go 5 deep and cover everybody on the field? Marshall couldn't do it. They came close for a half. They did really well for a half. But they couldn't do it for a full 4 quarters, and I'm betting that the Roadrunners can't do it for a full 4 quarters either. Look, let's revisit some of these players to look out for UTSA. Then we're going to get Steven's keys to victory and all the other good stuff that we do on this show. Quarterback Frank Harris, of course, is the guy you got to look out for on offense. 2,688 yards, roughly half of what Bailey Zappe's got this year. 23 touchdowns, roughly half of what Bailey Zappe's got this year. 5 interceptions, good for 66.5% completion percentage. Only sacked 12 times. That's a real plus for this UTSA offense. And of course, he's also the second leading rusher for the Roadrunners. 94 attempts, 484 yards, and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Everybody by now knows Sincere McCormick, one of the finer backs in Conference USA and in the country from a yardage standpoint for sure. 262 carries for 1,275 yards. He's almost automatic for 100 yards a game, of course. Getting about 4.9 yards per carry, but he's only found the end zone 12 times. So Western's fresh off of shutting down the nation's rushing touchdown leader, Rasheen Ali. Kept him out of the end zone. Kept him under 100 yards. Like I said, it's a different type of defense. McCormick may have tougher sledding. And this was a topper defense that didn't have Will Ignont in the Moonshine Throwdown. Let's not forget that. A couple of wide receivers we have to spotlight. Zachary Franklin, 67 catches. Would be about second on the team in Western Kentucky. 871 yards and 10 touchdowns. Wide receiver Joshua Cephas, 66 catches, 758 yards and 6 touchdowns. Since this Western Kentucky game, the last time the Toppers lost, UTSA is averaging 36 points per game and allowing 22 points per game. Not too bad. Pretty good, right? Western Kentucky, since that loss, is averaging 45 points per game and only allowing 18 points per game. Much different disparity. So, take that for what it's worth. Just throwing that out there. 2 teams trending in kind of different directions. Defensively for the Roadrunners, safety Rashad Wisdom, 78 total tackles, 58 solo, and 6 passes defended. A couple of trio of linebackers that we have to spotlight. Linebacker Trevor Harmonson, 54 tackles, 33 solo, 1 sack, and 1 INT that went for a touchdown. Jamal Ligon, 54 total tackles, 25 of those solo, half a sack, a pass defended, interception, and a forced fumble. Good all-around linebacker. And the linebacker we have to spotlight for a different reason. He's the impact play guy. Linebacker Clarence Hicks, team lead, 8 sacks. Next closest is 5 sacks. So Clarence Hicks is one you got to put a circle around. He's definitely got a knack for getting to the quarterback, which we know something that Western Kentucky does well is keeping people off of Bailey Zappe. Steve, what are the Toppers going to have to do to get a dub in this game?
I mean, I've got 3 major things, and it skews a little bit from where, because I usually say start fast. But I don't think a fast start, we just saw, fast start isn't necessarily a have to do. But one thing we have to do is pretty much run chalk and turnovers. It can't be a big surplus to UTSA. So chalk and turnovers, I'm not saying none, but if it's 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, you're okay. But you have to combine that with the penalty factor. And that's all I've read looking into UTSA's recent games is there's been a huge disparity in penalties at the Alamo Dome. Teams having 15, 16 plus penalties, just false starts and things of those motion pre-snap penalties that can hurt you, set you back, get you off your behind the chains. turnovers and penalties, I lumped them together because you need to run chalk turnovers. You need to minimize the penalties. They're going to happen. They happen every game, dome or not a dome. But we can't let it become a shooting ourselves in the foot, stall a drive, put you behind the chains, your progression of continuing a drive. The second thing, you mentioned it earlier, they have a guy that likes to get out there, quarterbacks. We just faced one of the better defensive line and better defenses in the conference. And like Bailey Zappi said, one of the better ones in the country. If you want to look statistically at Marshall, we have to protect Zappi. Keep him clean, give him a good pocket, get him time to make reads, progressions. If he gets sacked, again, not the end of the world, but for the most part, protect him, let him lead the offense, keep him clean. And then the last point, finish drives. Preferably you want to finish drives with 6, obviously. We can lean on Legatron. We did that in the last game in the first half. We leaned on Legatron. But we need to finish drives with 6. This could be a game that comes down to a possession or two. And at the end of the day, keeping Haggerty off the field, finish drives with 6, really could become crucial, especially when you're in a road environment playing for a title. I mean, every point could be necessary. It could be, what decides the game. So those are my 3 big factors that we have to do to win the game.
So I'm not thinking of this one necessarily in terms of what they have to do from an execution standpoint, like particularly like we have to run for X amount of yardage or we have to throw for X amount of yardage. This is kind of I don't know what adjective to use. So these are just things that came to me based on what I just saw, what was a real downfall for the Herd in where they were having success. And the number one biggest thing was, for Western to get a win in the Conference USA Championship game, number one is I think you're going to have particular attention to detail. And what I mean by that is trust your technique, trust your practice, and trust what you've been doing, because we see where a missed block or not necessarily making the right move can lead to a disastrous play. Right. And we saw something like that, which knocked Grant Wells out of the game. And it was like the end for the Herd in this game in the Moonshine Throwdown. So let's make sure attention to detail is to the minute, utmost detail that you can pay attention to. Number 2, drown out the noise. Right. I mean, it's just
literally. Yeah.
It's just people yelling. Like, it doesn't affect what you do if you don't let it. And to that end, a few quick touchdowns, it'd be pretty quiet in the Alamo Dome. The quickest way to drown out the noise is to get that evasive quick start. But if you can even just get 14-0 in the first quarter, it's going to be a pretty quiet place until UTSA manages to get a big play or a big hit or something, and you get that crowd re-energized. Number 3, Western's going to have to play fast but controlled, right? And Zappi mentioned that in the podcast. He was trying to do too much. He was trying to make it happen too much at one time. And then they come out in the second half and they get back to playing their game. They playing at their speed and things start hitting. Number 4, it's just another game, man. It's just another game. Do what you do. Run your offense. Let your defense continue to eat, and your special teams continue to be the model of consistency. And I think really, I mean, if they have an average Western Kentucky game that we've seen over the past 2 months, they're going to win. They're going to win. It's just the nature of the game they've been playing the last couple of months. An average by the numbers game for Western is enough to beat this UTSA team. Steve, who's your 200 proof player for the Conference USA Championship game? Death, taxes, championships, and
the 4-horse, Bailey Zappi. I mean, the man is every bit as advertised from the preseason position breakdowns, saying he could chase Western records. Now he's broken some of those, a lot of those coming up. NCAA records are on the horizon. the Heisman train hype is hashtag
Real?
rolling. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's legit. People are taking notice. People are Zappy for Heisman to the death. This game will be decided by how many yards he puts up. But I really think the difference in the game is going to be the defense. We were starting to turn the corner defensively against UTSA. We started to get some pressure. We weren't the turnover machine as we are now, kind of the big red turnover machine, if you will. But, Frank Harris is in for a game defensively, what he's going to feel at pressure. But Bailey Zappi is going to be the one lighting up the scoreboard and leading us to victory.
I'm not trying to be the downer here, but even you didn't think that Zappi was going to be this good in the preseason. Yes, I know you said he could compete for some Western Kentucky records, and he's broken those, and he needs like 85 yards to break Brandon Doughty's single season passing yards record. He's already broken the touchdown record. But I don't think even you thought he would potentially be in position to be put up one of the all-time NCAA seasons at quarterback. What we're seeing here is history. I mean, it is amazing. And whether you are a fan of Western Kentucky or not, if you like college football, you have to be in awe of what we've seen game in and game out by this guy. We are just fortunate enough to enjoy the team that he plays for. So it makes it that much fun, that much more fun. But yeah, he's my 200 proof player too. I mean, how can you bet against the guy? He's trying to set some all-time marks here. What's he need, like 8 touchdowns or something like that? I don't know, to break the single season.
To tie it.
Oh, to tie it? Okay, so got 2 games left. I know that sounds like it's a lot to do, but the dude sleeps 3 touchdowns. So if he has, and a slightly above average game, you're looking at 4 or 5, and then it's really within striking distance. So probably by the end of the first quarter, 20 minutes of this game, he's probably going to have the passing record at Western Kentucky well under his belt, if at least by the first half. So yeah, give me Bailey Zappi. I don't know which receiver will be the guy because, who knows? It could be any one of 5 people.
Pick your poison.
Or it could be any 2 of 5 people, or 3 of 5 people, or 5 of 5 people for that matter. But give me Zappi and whoever the hell he gets in a groove with in that game. How about that? What's your score prediction for the Conference USA Championship game?
Well, I've been kicking numbers around. If you see me scribbling over here, it's because I'm writing my options down and just reviewing what I want to do. That over-under number, 72.5, I think that's like 3 games in a row we've been at that over-under number.
It has been pretty, yeah.
Vegas has like pegged us, like that's where we're going to be. But shockingly, for the first time probably in maybe all season, I'm going under that over-under. Part of that's the dome effect on the road. But give me a nice, and let me emphasize nice win, 45-24. Spread obviously being smashed. Under is under because that is 69 total for the under.
Nice. Not bad. You're going with the 45 points per game average that Western has averaged since that loss. You're going slightly above the 18 points per game they've been allowing. Again, you know how I do this. I look at the game, the first thing that pops into my head, that's what I go with. Give me 42-31, tops in a semi-tight one, but still cruising to a 11-point victory. I don't think it's going to be that much in hand. Of course, I just think they're built for it. And not to mention that there's going to be a large contingency of Sappy fans, Stern fans and family, Kitley fans and family there. And the last thing I'll note about that is I've seen some people even saying things to the effect of, boy, I hope Kitley is spending a lot of time interviewing for Texas Tech jobs and not game planning for UTSA. To that, I say, it ain't happening, Chief. Maybe after this game, but not before this game. Steve, final thoughts time. What do we got here as we're heading into the final season or the final week of the season, discounting bowl season. I mean, it's been one for the ages if you're a Hilltopper fan. Everybody take a collective exhale and breath, even though the conference championship game is not over yet. This is one this fan base has needed. They've deserved. It's been a rough couple of years, not necessarily under the Tyson Helton era, but since Brom left, it's been a slower than expected rebuild, and here we are on the culmination of a third Conference USA football championship.
Yeah, I mean, seasons like this one are that much more appreciated because we went through the last few years of Helton underperforming last year, the Sanford years with Junior Adams, and it makes you appreciate just the greatness and the points and the yards and the touchdowns and just everything we're experiencing, because as soon as this game's over, bowl season's over, there's a lot of coaching openings out there that are still unfulfilled. La Tech just hired the Texas Tech offensive coordinator, which means there's an offensive coordinator position available in Lubbock, where our offensive coordinator has been and his dad is a coach at and he's coached at. So obviously there's stuff to worry about down the road. But like you said, this game is not going to be influenced by those type of decisions being made, because Kitley's going to be there. If they want him, he's going to be there before or after this game. That position is not going to be filled before this Friday, guarantee it. If he's on their radar and he wants to go there, I'm all for people moving up. I know coaches at our level are here until they earn a better position somewhere else at a better program, or they fail and they get fired. I have accepted that. My biggest concern is how do we react to that if that change occurs. So I am going to soak in this moment like I've soaked in this season and the greatness that Zappy and Stearns and just the whole offense has breathed life back into the program. And it's just been a fun season. No matter how this Friday goes, no matter how this bowl game goes, this season has been incredible. Obviously, we hope to win. We want that ring. We want the conference championship. We want the bragging rights. We still have that underdog mentality, even if we're favored. We were picked, second or third in the East. And we started the season 1-4, and we've had all these FCS transfers, and surely they can't translate into FBS success and major players, not the leading receiver in the nation, not the leading quarterback yards and touchdowns in the nation, the best offensive coordinator in the nation. But those guys are doing it, and there's a chip on their shoulder. And, unfortunately, UTSA is the one in the way of the buzzsaw, and it's coming. And this season, no matter how these next two games go, have been special. There are still records out there that they want to break, and they know how close they are. That team knows, and Bailey knows, and they're going to let him know. And this offense is just built to break those records. So when it happens, it won't be a surprise. Obviously, no one could have predicted that in the preseason. I predicted some pretty lofty goals at the time that, hey, we could threaten some of those, possibly break some of those. But now we've broken them with 2 games to go, pretty much. That's special. We might never experience this again, likely. So to just get to soak that all in is just unreal. It's been a great season. Disappointing losses always happens every year. Great wins, riding a high of a win streak with hopefully a couple more to go. So it's been fun, and hopefully there's still more fun to be had. I feel like there is.
Yeah, it just feels like this team is destined for a championship. I'm not being a UTSA hater here, because for a long time I was cheering for them, and I still didn't hope they would lose, but it started to get a little tedious. The fan base over there was really just like banging their chest like they had really accomplished something. And they had, they were nationally ranked, they were undefeated, and that's a big deal. But I mean, like, you hadn't won a championship yet. Like, you still haven't. And it just seemed like some of those more vocal fans thought that no matter who was going to face them in a conference championship game, that they were just going to lay down and take the loss and hand the Roadrunners a conference championship simply because they were undefeated. And I made the comment, a couple of weeks back that y'all ain't been crowned anywhere outside of San Antonio. And that got crickets in response because it's true. Nobody outside of San Antonio is calling you champions because there's a large contingency in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and throughout the Conference USA East Division that would say, yo, this team that's repping our side over here is pretty freaking good. And until you get through them again, you got through them once, but until you're going to have to get through them again to fully win that championship. You may get it, but you're not going to get it until you beat Western Kentucky a second time. So this has been an absolutely entertaining and fun season to watch. We've seen more all-timers emerge. We have seen guys develop to into new roles on the defensive side of the ball that we were hoping we would see, laying a foundation for next year's team if they, choose to come back and play for Western Kentucky again. I hope that they do. They got something special brewing there. But I'm not bringing an abrupt halt to any of this now. I'm not saying coaches are getting hired away. I'm not saying that the season's over and now you're going to have to worry about a bowl game and, man, I hope it's a good one. No, man, I feel like this is a team of destiny a little bit, that they're destined to win this championship, that they're destined to go play in as high profile of a Conference USA bowl game as they can get against the highest profile opponent that they can get and prove that they can beat whoever the hell it is that they put in front of them. Can you imagine being able to sit here 2 weeks from now, or not 2 weeks from now, but 2 games from now, talking about a 9-game winning streak? I mean, how long's that been? I would venture to say it's been a real long time since we've been able to talk about a 9-game win streak, if ever. So let's just take care of business this week, because it'd be really, really awesome to come back and do a conference championship podcast. It's been a long time since we've been able to do something like that. So, Steve, if you ain't got anything else, let's get the heck out of here and look forward to a Friday matchup against UTSA.
Hey, Alamo Dome, this is our house. Go Tops.
Go Herds. It's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. We'll see you next week. Later.